Well, welcome to Pick Up the Mic, the only official Harvest podcast so far, with me, Mike Greiner, the lead pastor at Harvest Church, and our trusty sidekick right here, Mr. Will Land. Hi, Will.
What's up, everybody?
And and taking care of business for us is our own producer,
Jigglypuff.
Mr. JJ Puff.
Yeah,
JJ Puff.
love him.
He's our guy, and he has things to say. He's going to be miking up soon. We told him he needs to mic up because he has interesting things to say, but he's not ready yet. He's still planning it out. But that doesn't mean we may not drag you in and just start asking you questions. But anyway, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, Minnesota.
It has.
So what's on tap?
On tap for today is we're going to dig into was a really prolific topic in today's society, which has to deal with this week's sermon, trusting the Lord, and how trusting the Lord and finding contentment in Jesus plays into anxiety in your life. So we live in a very anxiety-riddled society right now.
Mm-hmm.
Did not look up statistics. Don't need to. It's all over the news. I think all of you guys out there know it, feel it. We all know people in our lives that suffer with anxiety. I myself suffer with anxiety from time to time. So it's something that is very common. It's common in our church, common in our neighborhoods, and it ties right into...
What do you think it comes from? This is not scientific. This is your best shot at it.
I think it comes from... this is anecdotal to me, but I've seen it in other people because in my community group and in some of my friends in church, I interact with a lot of other people that also suffer from anxiety, not just myself. And comes from lack of trust in the Lord, which is going to tie into the sermon. And fear of loss, I think. Loss of control or just general loss of good things. I think a lot of it has to do with loss of control, acknowledgement of the actual weak grip you have on your own life and existence and the things that are in it, material things, relationships, people in your life. It's coming to terms with the fact that you're not really the boss of everything.
I have so many answers to the same question, and you hit on a couple that I thought about for years. One being safety. I think you put it another way, but control, but safety deep within. Am I safe? I think our mortality comes in.
That's what it is for me.
In the Bible, it says, perfect love casts out all fear. And then it says this, for fear is involved with punishment. And those two things don't go together naturally. You need a theological story between the word love or fear and punishment to figure out how does that work and how does love interact? If you take punishment, love, and fear, those three things, the Bible is putting all three together and saying love's the remedy. The problem is fear of judgment, right? Of punishment. So this may be insight you can't get from social sciences or observing humans, just from the Bible that we have within us. This is what I think it's trying to say, as my guess, is we have within us a fear of death and a knowledge of insufficiency. Now, we know from the garden, as soon as our grandparents, Adam and Eve, sinned, they were ashamed. For the first time, they were ashamed and it expressed themselves in embarrassment of their nakedness. So something in them made them afraid of being themselves from the moment they sinned. So if you take that bit and you add it to perfect love casts out fear, because fear has to do with judgment or punishment, I think you can connect some dots there.
Oh, you're spot on for me. I mean, my first big bout with panic attacks and anxiety, I think, was all wound up in fear of judgment. And I still, even to this day, as a Christian now, and a Christian who's maturing past infancy, if I find myself wound up in a panic attack or an anxiety episode, which sometimes lasts for prolonged periods, there's definitely a lack of assuredness of salvation in there. It is a fear of judgment.
So that would be for a Christian who knows the truth from God on that, the expression it takes, probably closer to precise. I think if you're not a Christian, it's still true.
Yeah.
It's still true. You're still fearing punishment. You may not realize it because God tells us. Remember, God's word gives us revelation, things we couldn't find out otherwise. So let me tie another idea into that, very similar, is people wear fig leaves naturally. Now, you don't think of it as your clothing, but everyone has some level of self-consciousness. Well, everyone except a 1-year-old or a 6-month-old and a sociopath, uh, and they kill people. So the that causes them to. You could use a lot of verbs here: hide, pretend, um, project, something that hides something. So I need to look better than I am to this group of people. I need to look smart. I need to look handsome. Need to look tough. I need to look put together. Um, and we do that quickly. You don't have to teach someone. Whereas if there was no fear of the self and you walked into a group, the thoughts of, I need to look anything. Did I comb my hair? What do my teeth look like? Anything wouldn't be there. And you wonder if Jesus, he's probably a very disarming person, even no matter what he was talking about, because he was a shameless, not shameless, that's another meaning, a man without shame, because a man without sin, and a man without hiding. He was a thoroughly honest man, not just in what he said, but in all his thoughts and in all his projections of himself. He was a real dude. He didn't have to hide anything. Like I came here today and I thought, "Oh, I should take a shower so I could quaff my beard and whatnot." And I thought, screw it. And I wore a t-shirt. Um, and I didn't put on buttons. And that's not a big deal. It's a little deal. But I do think everyone hides. And what we call insecurity is really saying I'm ashamed of being myself in front of someone or somewhere. And that can be God, like that's what you're saying, but it can be anybody.
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of the anxiety people have nowadays is tied up with social anxiety, what other people think of them, or um, fear of being around people they don't know very well.
Fear of losing control in front of people.
Yeah.
There are people who are agoraphobic or because they're afraid something's going to happen to them in front of people and they'll look stupid.
Yeah.
And that's so that leads me to another theory I'm working on, and this is newer in my brain about anxiety. Um, no evidence. I'm just starting to think this out. And because our society is so individualistic, so wealthy, we have so many options, we don't have a regular social, what we would call normal experience. Let me give you what I mean by that. Let's say you were in a technologically regressive tribe. So go back in time if you want to pick any tribe. Can be white, can be Indian, can be black. Just let's say a more primitive, closer to the earth time where you didn't have telephones, cars, and wealth. You are going to naturally, you couldn't control birth, right? You're going to naturally have systems in place that you and the people in the house next to you, whatever that house is, the hut, people in the house next to them, you're all doing the same things at the same time. The children know their roles and they all do it during the day. The mothers know their roles, the fathers know their roles. So you get up in the morning, you know this is what's normal. And that includes human communication, whether what your work and your chores are going to be, uh, whether it's educational, schooling, it's routine. So socially, there's a comfort in that routine. Today, we don't have any routine. You can go to school. You don't have to go to school. You can wear different colors. You can do different things with your hair. You can stay in the house all the time. You can go out of the house all the time. No, there are no rites of passage for a man to say you go from boy to man. Every society has always had that until modern technology and wealth and autonomy has taken that away. So we live in a time where there's no handles. Nothing says now you're a man, now you're a woman. Nothing. So we don't know how to act.
Yeah. There's also significantly less relational handles. Like in that same society of yesteryear, like you're talking about, the number of people you were likely to have interacted with by age 15 was a drastically smaller number than it is now. I mean,
But you knew
you
them.
knew them all. That like your
You can
level of
interact with a
intimacy
million now and don't know any of
and
them.
don't know any of them.
You cannot know the people in your house because you can set a lifestyle where you atomize. You have your room, you have your room. Did you do your homework? You don't live together. You don't talk together. And you're not forced. There's so much push on don't get into my space. There's no forced relationships. I think that doesn't cause anxiety, but it sure makes it easier to have because if you're trying to figure out who I'm supposed to be in front of other humans naturally, how do you get confidence? It's hard, and I think the internet probably helps some because they say, well, I can be confident in this subculture, and it could be anything from gaming to perversion to experts on the Civil War. It doesn't really matter what it is. I think that the identity we need safe places to hide and to be. And when society tells you who you are, when you're 15, you're going to stop hanging out with the children. You're going to go out on a hunting trip and paint your face and scream some things. Come back, you're going to be a man. You're going to relate to your mom different. You know who you are.
Right.
Today, it's a free for all. In any case, I'm just thinking about how that affects all the anxiety we see in people today. They don't know who they are, what to do, who to be. It takes you a while till you grow up. And I mean, I don't think you grow up till you're 50, so that would make you and JJ Puff over here little kids, but okay. Anyway, I do think there's genetic factors that lead to anxiety. Some people are just hardy. They're born and they land on their head. They're orphaned and it doesn't matter. They just aren't going to worry about nothing. And then you have people who could be in the perfect home and they're just going to think from the time they can think the sky is falling or someone doesn't like me and they can't turn off the looping thoughts.
Yeah. I want to get into that looping discussion, but
Looping.
I think a place I want to start is this idea of control, and how.
How about we start with the scripture
Okay.
and then put that on there?
Okay.
Because the Bible says do not fear all over the place. And Jesus
Yep.
talks about anxiety quite a bit.
I have a myriad of verses at the bottom here.
Oh, good. Well, let me just use the one from the text. Last week in our sermon, it was Jesus said, therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you'll eat, nor your body, what you'll put on. And so he's going to the basics, which to us, we don't identify with. You might say, well, I don't worry about if I'm going to eat. I worry about blank. But those are categories. Don't worry about your provision. And in his society, it was much bigger worry. You had to get your food every day. So he's saying, don't be anxious. Don't spend your mind worrying what you'll put on. And then his answer is because your life is more than food and your body is more than clothing. His answer is not what the anxious mind wants to hear. The anxious mind wants to hear, don't worry, I'll make sure that you'll have food tomorrow and the day after and the after, and I'll make sure you always have what you need. He doesn't say that. He's saying, if you go without food, you're still alive. And you're worrying about the wrong thing.
Yeah. Your life is more than.
Then he adds this. This is the next level. He goes, now consider the ravens. Think about birds. Think about the birds. Another time he says, consider the birds. This time it's the ravens. So he must have said it more than once. They neither sow nor reap. They have neither storehouse nor barn, yet God feeds them. So he's pointing out of the ravens, they have a provider. So now he's adding that to me. I have a provider. Okay, so now let's say you're a worried person and you're worried that your house is going to fall down, which may sound funny, but if you have OCD, some people actually worry, my house is going to fall down. And they look for assurances that their house isn't going to fall down. And they get people to examine their house so the house doesn't fall down and all these things. And so they say, God, I'm reading this. You say that you look after birds. What about my house? It could fall down. And God doesn't say your house won't fall down, but he does say, I'm watching you and I'll see to it that you're okay. He doesn't even say the house won't fall on your head because he's already established that life is outside of the body. So, Another place he says, "Do not fear those who kill the body." And I always crack up at that because I think that's the number one fear in the city, right? You lock your doors, you lock everything, you bring your pepper spray, you try to look tough and confident walking down the streets. You are the one thing you're afraid of is body killers. And he's like, nah, body killers. Psh. I'm like, well, those are kind of scary guys, body killers. And he says, don't be fear them. Fear the one who can throw your body and soul in hell, which is God. And so he does say, be afraid. You're just afraid of the wrong thing. And I think that's what he's saying here too. You're afraid of the wrong thing. Birds aren't afraid of this, and they're eating and they have a place to sleep. As long as you're alive, you can be guaranteed God will give you those. And then he adds finally, of how much more value are you than birds? So it's really like a 4-level step of insight. He's not just throwing out, it sounds simple, but it's more complex. He's saying, I value more. God in heaven values you more than birds that he takes care of. Your life isn't even just what you eat. Stop being anxious about your life. That's his approach. Now, how does that work with control?
Well, before we get to control, I think this ties into some of the other verses that I had at the bottom, which I find helpful when I'm in
Well, go ahead and say them so I can.
periods of
'Cause
anxiety.
I'm going to use my Mission coffee, and this is foamy, so it's going to get all over my mustache. So
I love
you
it.
do that. I'll drink it and I'll wipe my mustache off. Go ahead.
So in our text from the sermon,
That's good.
which is do not be anxious because your life is more than your body, right? And then you tie that into don't fear body killers, fear the one who can throw your body and soul into hell. And then he ties that in other verses all over the New Testament of why you shouldn't be afraid, because when you're in Christ, he hasn't destined your body and soul for hell, right?
That's
So
right.
I love Thessalonians 5:9 and 10. For God has not destined us for wrath, but to obtain salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ,
Yes.
who died for us, so that whether we are awake or asleep, we might live with him, right? So it's
Waking and sleeping.
means whether you're bodily dead.
So Paul, and I just want to stop just to clarify for anyone who may not be familiar with that language. Paul uses this word for death. He calls it being asleep.
Yeah.
And he's not talking about the soul. Some people think it's soul sleep. He's talking about your body.
Yeah.
Is not really dead. It's asleep, which is just a very happy face to put on being dead. So go on.
So when you tie it together, it's don't be afraid of these worldly concerns, because your life is more than the world, and trust in my promise that I've got you in the things that are more important than the world, right?
Yes.
I did not come to destine you for wrath,
Right.
but to a greater hope, right?
So then here's what anxiety does with that. Ready?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
It says, but what if?
But what if?
And then it goes all over the place. But what if it's not true? But what if everything you believe isn't true? But if all your reason's wrong? Or goes another direction. But what if you're not really saved? But what if I die and I'm happy? What if my family falls apart? The what if generator
It's never ending.
yeah. So there's yabbits, what ifs, and just. And that if you want to see, if you're talking to an anxious person, as soon as they say yabbit, what if, or just, you wouldn't think the word just, but just, because you can be chatting and you could say these things from the Bible, and they'll say all of a sudden, I just want to feel, and they just threw out your whole argument and put the word just and said, I think I'm just going to keep being scared now.
Yeah.
And that's how it works in everybody.
And I've been there 100 times. Even in talking to you.
I don't hate saying this. I like saying this, but I've always wondered if people believe me. I was once dominated by worry, not for a day, not for a year, for, how old are you in the 7th grade? From the 7th grade till I was 29, dominated. Now, as anyone who knows, who's experiences chronic anxiety, it's up and down. You have your seasons, and then you study those seasons, and then you think, I hope Anxiety doesn't jump out and get me again. And your world can get small because you make a bunch of wrong conclusions. If I don't do this, I won't get scared. Well, you're wrong. You're just making your world smaller. It doesn't really work. But I went through that, and I do not struggle with worry very much. I'd say it's less than normal. In fact, I think I had a stress breakdown in 2016 because I didn't worry. And since I didn't worry, I wasn't paying attention to my body, which was saying you're burning you're burning out. You're putting too much serious things on your plate, and you're not relieving the stress. And that was an insight for me. Anxiety is two things. It's worry, but it also has a physical expression, and those two aren't always connected. In fact, a panic attack is when the physical expression is so high, it outpaces the worry. Very often people have a panic attack and they'll say, I didn't even know I was worrying at that moment. Just so um I've been there. I wish I could tell everyone how to get out, but I have learned a ton from it. So that's good news. It's good news because I can encourage people, hey, you can get out of this.
Yeah, it is good to have hope. I'm in a down cycle right now. I don't know that I'm looking back on it forever in my life. Every time you're in a down cycle, you hope that you're like, oh, I've learned so much through the last one. I probably won't have another one. And then,
Yes, but if you could, okay, so here's something Christians deal with. The Bible says, don't be afraid, don't be anxious, don't be afraid, don't be anxious. But I am anxious, so that means I must not trust God. And I'm going to give you some relief, and I'm not taking away from the scripture. There is a volitional aspect to this. In other words, there's a place where you are wrong if you don't make a choice against fear. And I'll get to that in a second. But first, I want to say just being struggling with a mind that won't slow down is not necessarily volitional. How you respond to it's going to be volitional. It's just you're weak. And by weak, I don't mean weaker than your average bear. You're a mortal. You are a mortal. And mortals, this mortal body is not strong. So even though your thoughts, you got it. You have a brain and it has neural pathways and it has synapses and they're used to going a certain electrical impulses a certain way that you've trained them by accident or by genetics over time. And they have to be retrained. And that is done by the mind, not by medicine. Medicine can be helpful to take the edge off, but it is done by the mind because if you talk to an anxious person, they're very anxious. And I do it all the time. And then I'll start telling them all these things that I'm telling you. And I know what's happening. And they're going, wow, he understands. And they start to get cheerful and they start to get up and they listen and they're like, wow. And all of a sudden they're feeling good. Now, that doesn't mean their anxiety is beaten. It means you feel so alone. It's amazing someone understands. Okay, good. Then they dip down again. The thing that they need to notice, though, is they felt better when they thought certain thoughts that I was saying to them, which means you do have some control. So here's where you fail if you won't face the problem. If you won't face the problem. And a lot of good Christians choose not to face the problem. And sometimes they don't even notice they're not. You can tell them you're not facing this. It takes them a while to get to that point. Very often it takes what we normally call nervous breakdown. Now you're facing it, ain't you? Before that, you're ignoring it. You're saying, I can do this. I've done it before. People giving you advice makes you nervous. They say, don't talk to me about it. I don't need your advice. I can do this. Well, you're not facing it. You've got to run right into the fire and say, just like an alcoholic, right? I have a problem with drink. You've got to look in the mirror and say, I'm one anxious dude and I need to turn and face it. But the reason they don't want to is deep inside, they they have no belief that there's a way to beat this thing. It's I'm an innocent person and anxiety attacks me and I don't know what makes it come. And but no, you have to turn on it and say, okay, I'm going to face this. And facing it is a process. It's not fast. It takes time. It takes patience with yourself. It takes months and years. People don't want to hear that either. It's not instant. And but if you choose not to face it, yes, I think you're being faithless. You're saying God says don't be afraid. You can't make that fear go away right now, but you can say I have a problem because I'm struggling to obey that. And I'm not going to act like there's no problem. Now, let me put some feet on this. Um, let's say you're afraid to go over bridges. Very common, especially for women who are anxious. They don't want to be in a car that goes over a bridge. Not all of them, but I guarantee you a ton. It's very common. As a Christian, this is limiting. It's hard to go from here to there. So what you'll do is, before you're facing it, what you do is you engineer a life that doesn't take you over bridges. And sometimes you fight with people because they want to go over a bridge, but you don't tell them why you're fighting. Um, one girlfriend says to another girlfriend, "Hey, let's go over there. They got a new place that does nails. I want to try it out." You always want to get your nails done in a new place. What's wrong with the old place? And then that person begins to argue. Well, nothing's wrong with the old place. I'm not trying to, why are you so defensive? I'm not defensive. I just think you're always wanting to do something new. What's wrong with it? It's just around the corner. We'll save some gas. And now they're arguing when really the person is so quick at protecting herself from going over bridges. She's not telling her friend, you know what? It terrifies me to think of going over that bridge. Right? She just won't say that out loud. And that's step one, to be honest. Right? There's people who say, well, I just don't want to go. Why not? Well, I don't feel like going to a party. Okay, you don't have to go to the party. You don't have to go to the bridge, but let's start with honesty. You're deadly afraid of the social things when you walk in that door. So say that out loud to yourself. And then you can begin to tackle it. Then you say, God, what's my way out of this? It may not happen. You may not just be jumping on bridges that day, but now you're facing it. And now you're facing it with God.
Yeah, I can say as
And
someone.
by the way, I appreciate your vulnerability. You just said, this goes out on YouTube.
Yeah, well,
Probably
I am one of these
the
people.
NSA and, the FBI is looking at you. They probably think you're a Christian nationalist or something. You know how they hate us.
I am a Christian
And
nationalist.
they know now. And they're thinking about you. Look, he's anxious. Let's get him.
I am one of these anxious people. My thing happens to be,
Hypochondria?
I guess you would call it hypochondria. I have been dying of multiple things at multiple
For
points
how
in my
long?
life. Decades.
You're tough.
I
You're
know,
still
man.
here.
I've
What a
gotten
fighter.
through. I've gotten through some really bad diseases that I never actually had. So I've been one of these
But
people.
you might get them.
I
What if
might
you
get them.
do?
And what if I did have them? And someday I'm going to prove all you people wrong that think I'm crazy and actually
right.
die of something.
And it'll go on your gravestone.
And it'll go
I
on my
told you
gravestone.
I was sick. That's
So-
what we're going to put on there.
So I am one of these people. I have said many times in my life, yeah, but, what if, or just, I've said those things in front of this man. And I will say it is the first step and of great relief to just admit it and get it out. You saying, like, when you get to talk to somebody who's anxious and when all of a sudden they realize that you understand it, I have been that person in front of you talking to you while in the depths of pure panic that all of a sudden feel 10 times better just getting it out and letting somebody understand. And I think this is where Christian community is so important. Now, in my most recent bouts when I'm struggling with it, I have some intimate friends that know I struggle with this. And when I'm starting to go into a little yeah, but what if cycle, I just throw it out there immediately. Even it can be awkward. I can call somebody up just for the purpose of telling them I'm feeling anxious and just letting them know, and them being able to talk to me about it can help slow down.
So in the Bible,
that curve.
In the Bible, we're told that everything we have is of grace. It's given to us. But there's three means of grace. In other words, access points. One's prayer, one's the Word of God. Everything's the Word of God, but that includes prayer, the Word of God, and the church. And the principle will work even if you're not a Christian. You need other people. And that is a release valve. Okay, so OCD runs in my family. Okay. And I don't think any of them mind me saying it because I'm their dad for my kids. My dad knows he's the one who shared this with me. And I didn't know that he struggled with anxiety till a very uncomfortable time in my life. And I'm not mad at you, Dad. I love you anyway. But I understand why he didn't share it, especially at his age. They didn't really define it as much, and he's a soldier and a tough soldier and a hard worker. So my kids, though, have all these strategies, and they actually know them with each other. They will say it to each other. And if you're not an insider on OCD talk, OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's an anxiety disorder. And by the way, all anxiety is the same. Whether you have obsessive compulsive disorder, which is where you have an obsessive thought you can't make go away until you do a compulsion, and sometimes they're not related, or you have agoraphobia, which is afraid to go out of the house, or social anxiety. They all have the same root. Okay, and so my kids one will say to another, "You're checking right now," and they're like, "Yeah, right, I'm checking," and it's so helpful for them. Now, if you don't know what checking is, it's when it'd be like if, Will, you said to me, you all of a sudden were afraid that you had
Lung cancer.
lung cancer again, and and you said something like, "So I was coughing. Anybody else coughing? There's been something going around, right? Yeah. If you're in my family and their radar would be up if they knew it was worry based. You can feel it. They go, 'You're checking, aren't you?' And then they'll joke with each other, say, 'Nope, we're not coughing. You have lung cancer,' and we all laugh, and it really helps."
It does. I have that same relationship now with these friends who don't struggle with hypochondria and making levity of it. They know it's serious for you, so it's in a loving way. They're not actually making fun of you. They're just trying to make light
Of it.
of it, and it helps you make light of it.
In a very serious way, my daughter sometimes will say, "Dad, I just want to ask you one time, and I'm not going to keep asking you." And I know whatever she's talking about, she's given herself self-therapy. She knows she's going round in circles on something, but she's got to get it out of her mouth, right? Now, for her, the way she would deal with it is she'd do that before she faced her fears. She did that all day long. She talked to this friend, that friend, that friend, that friend, that friend, that friend, that friend. I'd find myself giving her advice, and then she'd go talk to someone else. I said, "You're talking about the same thing. We already talked about that." What she was doing was constantly assuring herself she knows not to do that, that that's a bad habit. But every once in a while, in a weak moment, she'll say, "I just need to know once," right? The wheels aren't going to fall off my car, right? I'm just going to ask you once, and I'll know. No, they're not falling off your car. Unless she hasn't done that one. She'll go, "I know that. I just needed to hear it so I can not check."
Yes, this conversation is funny because I would have never really associated all these anxiety disorders so tightly together until you start to learn more. But even if you don't have OCD per se, the patterns are the same. Sometimes they're just on longer timescales. I would check by making doctor's appointments. So my checking timescale would be much
Oh, yeah, yeah.
longer, but it's the same in practice.
It's the same, and you can get you've probably been tested for a lot of things.
Oh,
Doctors are like, "This dude is healthy." Um, Here he comes again. So, let me give some. I'm going to tell you the way out of anxiety from a mechanical point of view. Okay, and this really is the way out, but it won't be a magic pill. It's just the same as if I told you the exact way to say, throw a football the correct way. You still have to learn to do it, and you have to practice 1,000 times,
yeah, it
right?
takes
Or
practice.
right. And your practice could look different than other people's, okay? But here's what it is. When the fear comes up, let's say it's a fear of candy, which is I don't know if anyone has a fear of candy. There's probably someone out there going, "I do." Well, I'm like, "Sorry, I didn't mean to pick on you. I was picking something I thought no one had." You have a fear of this. When the fear comes up, and you think, "Well, I have to read the label in the back of every candy, or I'm going to go crazy. I got to read the label." And then you feel that. You feel it until you do it. Now that's external. It could be internal. I have to think about this over and over again. It's a feeling. And the way you satisfy the feeling, believe it or not, is worrying. And it doesn't satisfy it. I need to think about this. You can't even, someone says, "Daddy, can you help me?" "Shut up. I'm busy." You're not really busy. You're stressed, right? So what you actually have to do is say, "I'm not going to read that," or "I'm not going to think about that." Well, now I feel really uncomfortable. What do I do? You have to let that discomfort go.
You have to be uncomfortable.
And then you have to put your mind somewhere else. So you're literally coming outside of the anxiety system and noticing it. And then once you notice it, you come up with a strategy to endure it. And so what that'll look like in a lot of cognitive behavioral stuff, cognitive means thoughts of the mind. And I think if you're going to do any kind of therapy, that's your best kind. It's not really Freudian, it's where you literally change your behaviors. Um, they all go to that interruption point, and that's why they're doing it. Like if they tell you, how do I handle these feelings of fear? They'll say, act like they're clouds going over your head. Now, they're not saying it, but they're telling you the same thing I'm telling you to do. You're noticing you're afraid, and you're directing your mind away from the fear to clouds in your head. Some of them use what they call mindfulness, and I'm not going to get into that because it has some Eastern mysticism and some practical at the other end, and I'm not saying go that way. But I'm just saying what they're doing is like they'll say, put your face in some ice cold water. They're doing the same thing. They're interrupting the pattern. And what that does, it rewires the brain. I know one person says, I put a rubber band on me. As soon as I'm afraid, I snap it. And then they tell themselves some sort of mantra. Like, right? I learned this by accident because I went through this the hard way, not through therapy. I had some therapy, almost none of it hit this. Um, I had this time when I had it was in the 80s. I had a very tender conscience, and everything was making me freak out because I'd had a bit of a nervous breakdown, we call it, in like 1986. And what really freaked me out was anything to do with the macabre, horror. And I used to read Peter Straub books and Stephen King books. I love that stuff. But then at this point, if you said the word Satan, it freaked me out. Like it made me panic. But I couldn't stop. I'm a Christian, for goodness sake. You can't stop people from talking about the devil. It comes up in the scripture. And so what I had to do was quietly, I would say, I started to pray every time I heard the word, Jesus save me. And I started doing that automatically till I noticed I was doing it automatically. And I mean, after a few months, I noticed if someone said devil or Satan, I automatically was mantraing in my head, Jesus, Jesus. It was a quick Jesus prayer. And as time went on, I mean, to this day, if someone says it, sometimes I'll just say Jesus and I don't even notice it. I didn't realize that I was learning that by accident, God put me in a situation where by accident he taught me something. I was interrupting the fear cycle. Instead of me sitting around freaking out, I said, you're about to freak out, say Jesus. And it broke me out. Let me tell you one more, because this is really interesting. And
My my mantra was Philippians 4, 6, and 7. The be anxious for nothing.
but in all things. But then even that could backfire because then you're telling yourself, don't be anxious. But the other part is, in all things through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, make your request known to God. So
And he will strengthen your hearts and mind.
right. So this is interesting. I don't have it. I was diagnosed with internal OCD. Right. So it's OCD, but I don't like have to count the ceiling tiles. My daughter has definitely external. My dad external. And by the way, he's doing great now. So God bless him. And Lexpro helped him take the edge off, but he's getting older and he knows Christ. But my daughter Michael, when she was young, and that is her name, she's not a trans. We don't believe in trans. Um, she had a lot of this going on. We didn't even know it as a kid. I didn't know it. I'm way more educated now. She suffered than I was even when I suffered, and she would do all kinds of weird things. Like if she pet one dog, she'd have to pet the other dog. Michael, hope you don't mind me talking about it. I don't think she does. She does blog posts on it. Like if she didn't pet the other dog, she felt bad. Right. She had fears like, what if I accidentally kill my mother by touching her and having germs? And her fear was she'll be mad at me because I killed her. And she was deathly afraid of authoritarian anger. When she was, I mean, little, 3 years old, we'd put her in front of the Madeline cartoons. You know that French nun?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most tame card. If she ever had to correct one of those children, she felt fear that that kid was in trouble. So her hand washing was so that she wouldn't get germs to kill her mother. But even then, she would come out of the bathroom, touch her mother, and say, "What if I just killed you? Would you still love me? Would you forgive me?" And that was it. That was her routine. She had to ask, or she couldn't feel satisfied. And she didn't feel satisfied anyway. So we got her into a program that got a bunch of kids together and a team of, I wouldn't call them therapists, but behavioral cognitive technicians.
Yeah.
And what they did was they interviewed the kids till they figured out, let's say, their top 7 compulsions, and then they rated them. They interviewed them and worked with them till they could figure out which one, if it happened to you now, you can't. You're just going to go into deer in the headlights mode. Okay, they say this one. Okay, well that's 10. We're not going to touch that one because we don't want to freak you out. Which is the easiest to walk away from? And they made a ladder, and at the bottom rung they started, and they taught her these skills of start at the bottom rung. If you touch your brother's mashed potatoes, does it make you uncomfortable? Yes. Can you do it and then not say anything to him? I think so. That would be your homework. So one day she comes home and her brother's several years older, and he was like 11 or, and his sister comes and puts her grubby finger in his food and goes, sits down. And he's like, what the heck are you doing? But this was to teach her, right? Sometimes they got it wrong, but then they could adjust. Like she had a lot of trouble doing her homework. Many OCD people do because there's not a perfection in homework. So they told her what to do the homework a certain way and let it be. And she couldn't. So actually, she had to go back to it. Didn't work. I said, well, then here's what you're going to do. You're not going to do your homework. Well, then what'll happen? We'll find out, won't we? And so she learned that they taught her it's called, this is particular one's called exposure response therapy. Create the anxiety, then don't do the compulsion. And over time, what happens is after a while, somewhere in your brain rewires. You can just walk and put your finger in everybody's mashed potato. It won't bother you at all. And it's the same with internal thoughts. That you're rewiring the physical brain by thoughts. And here's where the Bible comes in. The Bible is how I clawed my way out because I didn't know any of this stuff when I overcame this. It was the hard way, the long way. The Bible is truth. It puts truth in your innermost being. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So beating anxiety is a process. But the ultimate win is truth and learning to be confident in your own thoughts. Right? I'm confident this is true and walking in that. It's not comfortable. It takes a lot of risk taking, and you have to figure out how to do it for yourself. But you'll never do it by answering whatever the what if says, because you're fighting imagination with reason. And imagination is not limited. Imagination, which is your fear, has your imagination. So it can come up with any scenario. Your reason is stuck in the world of logic. Yes, but I don't have lung cancer because this, and I know that. Then your imagination says, yeah, but you know this other guy who's never smoked in his life when he was 25, and you heard that story happened to him. Yes, but that's genetic. I don't have a genetic. Yes, but you, and you'll never beat your imagination. So the answer is you got to focus your mind on what you're doing. Focus your mind on where you're at. And notice you're doing it and turn away on purpose and just be uncomfortable. And eventually your brain actually will stop doing that to you. It takes time though. It's very rarely an instantaneous freedom from anxiety. Yeah. I do think routine helps though. I do think there are social situations that help. Believe it or not, I found out when I was in my anxious times that shopping for a car made me feel better.
Why is that?
I don't know. I had no idea.
How many cars did you buy?
I didn't buy them, but I was buying a car, but just looking for cars and thinking, I don't know if it's a left brain, right brain, up brain, down brain, and the way my brain works, it focused me in such a way that I thought, man, I feel better today. What were you doing today? Looking for a car. And then I realized there's certain things I can do. And that's where I'm back to society and focusing your mind. And there are social situations which are helpful too. So anyway, all that, now I'm just rambling and hodgepodging. But
I would say, the big takeaway from this is that you're not alone.
You got to be willing to say I'm a basket case.
There's hope.
Yeah, we had people leave this church when I stepped out for a stress. So then when I have my stress emergency, let me get to this. what happened was 2016 was a rough year for me, but I didn't realize how rough it was. And what was piled on my plate was my mom died. I had 2 funerals to do in 2 different states over several months, and it's my mommy, right? And I'm the guy who runs it, right? Because I'm the religious guy. I go to Alaska, I organize the whole thing, end up going to California with my family out there, did the whole thing. I'm taking doctor of ministry courses, which are always, I have my actual job. My poor daughter is in college, California, falling apart. Her boyfriend breaks up. Michael, I'm sorry, honey. She's doing great, by the way. She's wonderful, has a baby, she's pregnant, she's doing good. But at the time, she was falling apart, and I flew out there thinking she needs me, and I hung out with her for a couple of weeks to help her. And then I had to go to India, which you'd think make you happy. The team had a really big problem that was causing me a ton of stress that I wasn't paying attention to. At one point, Dr. Murray, a friend of ours who doesn't go to this church, said, Mike, make sure you're taking care of yourself. And I said, oh, I'm fine. Then, then that was the election from hell year. And then I had in-laws who weren't even going to eat Thanksgiving together. And I was calling them, they're not even believers, saying, hey, can we all get along? I was solving everyone's problem because I'm awesome, apparently. What I didn't realize was I was burning out everything in me. So then all of a sudden I have anxiety hit my whole body. And I'm like, hey, this hasn't happened to me since I was a young man. Why do I feel this? But I knew what to do. I shot right home because it was on a Friday after Thanksgiving. I came home. I went to our executive pastor, wasn't you then, so I'm going to preach tonight, but I'm falling apart. And after this, I'm not going to preach because I'm falling apart. And he's like, okay. And this church could have fired me. I would have let them because I learned to trust God no matter what. They didn't. And then I learned a lot about stress. I learned how to feel it in my neck, in my body, to realize just because you're not worrying doesn't mean you're not anxious, doesn't mean you're not, right? But here's the point I want to get at. Some people left the church over that, saying, pastor can't even hold himself together. What kind of church is that? You know what I say? See ya.
Yeah.
If you think you're all that in a bag of chips, everybody's weak. That's what
Everybody.
Paul says. 2 Corinthians, the beginning, he says, we were burdened beyond our capacity, so we learned to trust on God. I never claimed to be strong. I'm a basket case for Jesus. And that is what I say to anxious people. You got to get the guts to come out and admit it. You don't tell everyone your problem because not everyone cares for you, but you got to admit it.
Yeah. We were talking about this at our community group. I think that's one of the greatest things about this church is, we started off this whole conversation about the facade that people put on, right? The you can't let other people see that you're a real fallen human who's got issues. Well, everybody's got them.
Except Jesus.
Yeah.
And you're not Jesus,
him. And you're not him. We both got them. So, yeah, you're not alone. There's hope. And hopefully you have some intimate relationships out there in the church. If you don't, make some. This church is just full of loving, caring people.
And there's some great resources, too.
And there's some great resources. So if you're struggling, talk to one of us.
Yeah, no, I don't do long-term counseling for anybody.
Yeah.
Because it freaks me out.
Yeah.
But I can encourage you and hear you and help you make a plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so Jesus deals with anxiety. The Puritans dealt with anxiety. A lot of times you might go into church, you start singing songs, and you think, everybody's happy here. They're not.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't sing praise songs just because you don't feel happy. You might cheer up a bit. But don't ever think that everyone around you has got a good life and a perfect life and an easy life. The rain falls on everybody.
Well,
and everyone has different challenges. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Go ahead.
Getting back to bigger picture, why is anxiety seemingly so prevalent now as compared to even 50 years ago?
Why do you think?
And here's what I think. Christian worldview, right? I think all the way up until modern history, God's sovereignty and your lack of control was smack in your face every day.
I'm going to stop you 1 second because I want to give you the objection first so you answer it in your answer. Otherwise, I'm going to think about it the whole time.
Okay.
I would start with, I think we measure it more. If you look at the Puritans from the 16, 17, 1800s, they wrote some incredibly thorough what we would use the word deep and profound, those kinds of words, on depression and anxiety. John Bunyan, in his Grace Abounding, the Chief of Sinners, outlines 2 year struggle with OCD. He doesn't call it that. But the idea of a therapeutic culture where everything's you're this, you're that, they weren't labeling themselves back then. My grandmother, I know, struggled a lot, and she was born in 1909 or 8 or something. She was on the cusp of the time when you start identifying all these things. So part of my brain says there's always been these things. People have just struggled with them differently and defined them differently. Now, I do think there's an uptick, but I just want to get that out there so you
Fair
take
enough.
it in and you answer it.
Fair enough. So maybe the supposition that it's more prevalent now is
I think it is more
not.
prevalent. I do agree with you.
But I definitely think in previous times you didn't have the modern man's false premise that he's a master of the universe, right? When Time magazine declared God is dead, it's because all the modern materialists believe that we're going to be the master and commander of everything. Like, if there is a problem, we should be able to figure out a way to control it. Whereas in previous eras, you witnessed family members die regularly, brothers and sisters die
That's right.
regularly.
You had to handle their bodies.
You had to handle bodies.
You put the bodies on your kitchen table.
Exactly. Like you were just much more aware of how little control you had over the seasons, drought versus times of plenty. It was
we think we have a lot of control, and we don't.
Yeah. Now everybody.
We have an angry girl named Greta.
Right.
How dare you?
Now everybody. I mean, you got meteorologists. like everything's underneath this veil of we understand and have control over everything, and so when you finally in little cracks in your life feel like you're losing that false control, it can spark some of these
that's
thoughts.
Interesting.
Right?
There's even a story told on that note that you are in control, because there's commercials that tell you you can be happy, you can have this, and so you go get that. And I think also young women, and I think a definite phenomenon seems to be measured by several scholars and books these days. Young women in the internet makes for anxiety. 12, 13, 14, 15 on social media seems to makes men into perverts, little boys into a bunch of pervs, but girls, it makes them anxious and self-conscious and losing their identity. And I think suicide rates for them go up. And I think the internet is not healthy for an immature brain if it doesn't have a lot of boundaries.
Right.
But I think you're right. The philosophical angst, you have no one to turn to, right? You can't live forever.
You're not going to.
And when you die, if you don't believe there's anything, wow, you'd better stay alive.
Yeah. So we have written down here, remedy to anxiety.
Jesus is the remedy.
Trusting God every day.
Trusting God is always the remedy, even when you feel horrible.
So what are some good daily practices to get better at trusting God in your life?
Well, did you ask that with an answer? If you have an answer.
No, I mean, I
practice.
have the obvious Sunday school answers, which I do think are real. So let me go into
the means of grace.
The means of grace, which would be number one, his revelation through the word. Everything becomes clear in retrospect, right? Looking back, things always are more clear than when you're in the midst of the darkness, right? The Bible says this all over the place, and you can read it while you're in the pit and not really appreciate that it says this all over the place, that God's always working something in your trials and tribulation. But when I look back at all my episodes of maximal panic and anxiety, and for reference, they've been bad. So like last year, right around this time, I started my most recent one, and it lasted like 8 months. And I'm saying I went to the doctor, I think 3 or 4 times, And every time, I'm 35, I don't smoke, I'm relatively healthy, my blood pressure was like 220 over 170. Where my mom was saying, "You're not gonna die of whatever you think you have, you're gonna stroke out because of being anxious about it." So I'm saying bad, like
Moms know.
prolonged periods of fight or flight, adrenal fatigue, just resting heart rate of 120 with blood pressure so high, my head hurt, right? Um, when I look back at times like that, I was never closer to the Lord than in those moments.
'Cause you
Like when I
couldn't.
had nothing else to lean on, I was literally at the end of my rope.
So
I
you're
truly was getting stronger through my weakness, and you couldn't see it at the time,
so
but
let
it's so
me
clear looking back on
let
those
me answer your
episodes.
question then specifically then along those lines. First, don't put things in your brain that aren't good, even if you don't think they're related. I know people who struggle a lot with depression, and what are you doing? Well, I like to watch scary movies. Well, why don't you stop? Things that are dark or wicked, get them out of your head. Replace them with good things. Read biographies of people who've suffered in Christ, right? Um, they will encourage you more than anything. Um, Charles Spurgeon, there's much on his suffering emotionally, and it's excellent. It's very encouraging. I already told you John Bunyan. You could look at his, but even The Hiding Place by Corrie Ten Boom. Even though anxiety is not her issue, suffering is, and she gives a lot of great help in that for anxiety sufferers. So start putting Christians in your head. Read them. Take them to read. Read a book. I mean, it really helps. Another, when you get up in the morning, have a routine and make it positive. Don't let your mouth complain about anything, even if you're feeling like crud. Don't complain about the weather. Don't complain anything. No matter how you feel, keep a routine if you can keep it. Get other people to pray for you. Even someone you could just text saying, you could give them a 1 to 5 scale for your morning. Get up in the morning, I'm at a 5. It's a great day. I'm at a 1, which is a bad day. And then they can pray for you. Those means of grace. Learning to hear songs of praise and getting those in your head. So there's ways you can feed your brain. If you can focus on other people, don't always surround yourself with people who know you're suffering. You can go too far, and all you're doing is thinking about yourself, and that'll drive you nuts. One of the difficulties of facing anxiety and depression is you're focusing on yourself, and even when you have breakthroughs, it'll make you feel worse because now you're dealing with the hardest thing in your world, yourself, deep within. So you got to take breaks from that and focus on other things. Find restful or recreational things, even if they're not fun anymore, but they're at least distracting.
Yeah.
Do them. Um, so those are the low hanging fruit. But as far as scripture, there's some foundational scriptures that can be very helpful if you read them and think about them. One is in 2 Corinthians 1. Let me read it now. Paul is talking to the Corinthians about his suffering, and he says, this is 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3. I said 2 Corinthians because that's how Donald Trump says it. It's funny because he said 2 Corinthians, and everyone made fun of him for not saying second. And then Alistair Begg, who's from Scotland, said, I don't know why everyone made fun of him. Finally, someone's talking the way they're supposed to. And he's like, 2 Corinthians is how I've always said it. 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3, Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our afflictions, so we will be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort with which we ourselves are comforted by God. So he sees one of his purposes of going through something is he can reach out to another person. I found that true in my life. For just as the sufferings of Christ are ours in abundance, notice he says that, just get rid of any illusion that a world without suffering is possible. It is. It's called the new earth. You're not there. And you can say, well, why do I want to be a Christian if they're suffering? Well, if you're not a Christian, they're suffering too. You just don't have any help. For just as the sufferings of Christ are ours in abundance, so also our comfort is abundant through Christ. But if we are afflicted, it is for your comfort and salvation. If we're comforted, it's for your comfort, which is effective in the patient enduring of the same suffering which we also suffer. I want to stop there and say, here's the remedy for needing to feel better now. Patient enduring. God never tells you when he's going to lift the problems in your life. Instead, he says this: the faithful wait. Wait. If you think of the end of, I think it's chapter 40 of Isaiah, people like to say, they will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. I want to be that. Well, did you read the first part? It said, when young men and vigorous young men, they're in a situation that causes them to stumble badly. Then it says, but those who wait on the Lord. Okay, let me go on with this. So patient enduring, you patiently endure the suffering. It doesn't have to go away right now. I want it to. So pray, God, please take this suffering away right now. But if you don't, I trust you that you're working in me. Give me the strength to endure it patiently. Then it says, the same sufferings which we also suffered. And here's where he goes. For we don't want you to be unaware, brother, and I jump to verse 8, of our affliction. Well, affliction means it was very hard, which came to us in Asia when we were burdened. So burdened is a hard word. Excessively. How burdened? To excess, more than we can handle. Then he says, beyond our strength. So he considered himself burdened beyond what he was able to bear. Then he says, so that we despaired even of life. Indeed, we had the sentence of death within ourselves. So this is bad. And then he said, so that we would trust not in ourselves, but in God who raises the dead. As a Christian, as a successful church planting, Bible writing apostle of Jesus Christ, he suffered beyond what he could take to the point of despair. That's an emotional feeling that you have no hope. Why did I go through that? So that I would learn not to trust in myself, but in God who raises the dead. And there's no other way to truly learn to do that without suffering. And then he delivered us from this peril. And he said, your prayers helped. That's one. Another one would be Lamentations 3.
Before we get to Lamentations, that passage has played out in my life.
This 2 Corinthians chapter 1?
Absolutely. And it's afterwards, once you've been delivered in one way or another, either through seeing the Lord,
yes,
by going to sleep, or when you come out of the period of suffering, that has become clear to me.
There's a need for all of us to let go of our coping mechanisms, even though we don't even always seem to know what they are. And sometimes we won't let go if we have any grain of strength left. But when there is no strength, you literally it's you and God. I am not going to get up off the ground unless you can get me up, because I can't do it. That's when he proves himself to you. This is where Corrie ten Boom says there's no pit so deep that he is not deeper still. That's how she puts it. And you can learn that by listening to our voices say it. But that's not the same as learning it by being there. So another text that people can look up their own if they want to see it, especially if they're depressed, is read Lamentations, where Jeremiah describes his depth of depression. Read it, chapter 3. Just read chapter 3, the first half, till he gets to the happy part. You'll know it. But he starts describing his own depression and saying God put him there. I think that's important that you grasp. Satan is not the one putting you there. God is. You are in God's control. And he's molding you into the form of Christ. He's teaching you not to love the world. He's teaching you to let go of things that aren't good for you eternally or right now. And in Lamentations 3, he spells out how God is crushing him. And then he shows that joy comes in the morning. Everyone likes that verse, joy comes in the morning. They don't read what comes before that.
His teeth are breaking on gravel.
That's right. And another place, you need to live and eat. If you're suffering, Hebrews chapter 12. Just start at the beginning, go about halfway down. You live and eat that every day, because that's what's happening to you. God is disciplining you and shaping you. And when I crashed, it was 1985, I was 1986, I was 22. It's going to be 23 that year. And eager to finish college so I could go be a pastor. I was very excited about it. And then I couldn't because I was a basket case. And I had to fight this fight. And then I had to go get a job, feed my family, doing things I hated, which made it worse, made me feel worse. Now I'm stuck doing things I hate. But you know what? By the time I became a pastor at 33, God had so dragged me across the rocks and pounded me that some of my greatest problems, which would have gotten in my way, my blind spots, my insensitivities, uh, my competitiveness, my lack of ability to handle uh, opposition without crushing and killing, my fears, my insecurities, he smashed them. They weren't gone. I know who I am. But now I see those aren't powerful in my life. I can't let them run me. People will often say, well, I don't want to say nice sermon. I don't want you to give me a big head. I'm like, trust me, you can't give this guy a big head. I know that I'm an inch from being crushed, that all God's got to do is touch and I'm going down. There's, and Bunyan, I think, had a similar thing because he went through a great darkness. And I still remember this one quote. I won't get it right, but it was something like this. He never went to school, but he was apparently a great preacher, and God used him greatly. Heck, he wrote Pilgrim's Progress. If you don't know what that is, look it up. And he went to jail for preaching, not in the official church, and had a daughter who was blind, had to deal with that. He had anxiety, he had depression, but then he came through it. And one time he was preaching, some guy came up and says, that may have been the best sermon preached in England or something. And he said, I know, Satan told me before I walked away from the pulpit. It's like, you ain't going to puff me up with that stuff. Trust me. Once you're crushed and weak, you can have confidence in Christ.
Yeah,
And so there is a going through that needs to happen.
I think there's some themes here. So in the same text, in the text from the sermon, where Paul's talking about contentment, you pointed out in the sermon several times that he used the word learned in there several times. He had to learn, right? But that means going through it.
I learned to be content.
I'm a firm believer that forewarned is forearmed. I mean, we have the Bible telling us all over the place. Paul was saying it there. Peter says it in 1 Peter 4. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery trial when it comes upon you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice insofar as you share Christ's sufferings, so that you may also rejoice and be glad when his glory is revealed. Now that passage, taken it out of context, I think that's specifically about, what's the word I'm looking for?
Second coming.
Well, it's specifically about
persecution.
But
suffering is suffering.
But it's applicable to other forms of suffering. So Paul, Peter, God's word in its entirety. Hebrews 12. I was just in Hebrews 12 yesterday. Yeah, I mean, don't be surprised. It's going to come, and you're being put through the learning process so that you can really internalize it. Like you said, you might be able to learn something from us talking to you today if you haven't gone through some suffering in your life, but learning through experience is different. Is how it sticks.
And that doesn't mean everyone has to have a nervous breakdown. God has a different plan for every person. And if he's given you an especially sensitive emotional makeup, like I'd say he did me, that's his plan. But most people are going to be a little more hardy than I was. And that's good too. You don't have to say, well, God beat me up. No. Ask for happiness and joy. And don't look for trouble so you can learn the lessons of it. If you don't, struggle somewhere else. You don't have to struggle emotionally. If you don't struggle emotionally, don't bring it on purpose. It's not necessary.
And the other good thing to remember, whether it's emotional suffering or some other kind of hardship, I'm trying to remember its location now. The only beloved sons go through chastisement.
It's Hebrews 12.
Yeah,
okay. Where you were studying.
It's like I couldn't.
God disciplines every son he receives. If you're not disciplined, then you're illegitimate. And he says, we had earthly fathers who disciplined us as seemed best to them for a short time, but he disciplines us so we can share his holiness.
Yeah.
No suffering seems pleasant in the moment, but to those who've been trained by it, it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness. I never memorized that. I don't have it memorized. I spent so long in Hebrews 12. A lot of those phrases just sit in there because that's where you got to go.
Yeah.
So you go to the Bible. It will help you get friends. It'll help you live a life of routine that'll help you take negative, and also don't sin as a solution.
Yeah.
If sin helps for a moment and hurts in the long run.
Yeah, when I was before I was saved, when I was struggling with anxiety, one of the things that was distracting was alcohol, but it just makes it worse. It's a distraction through sin only ever just adds to the anxiety and the suffering,
especially because alcohol wears off.
Well, yeah,
or you gotta drink it again.
Even other sin, any other type of sin too. They add to your shame, which can add to your anxiety, and it's a feedback loop that's not good.
Sin is never a positive. As long as you're running to sin of any kind to get away from your troubles, you are not facing it with God. The answer is run right into the fire, and don't be afraid because you will be okay. I don't want to make this sound. You will be okay. You will be okay. And one, I don't know. I'm gonna throw this in because it did comfort me once, and you might say I don't see how, but it did. Once it hit me. One time I was thinking, man, I've felt bad like this before, but so I know I'll probably feel better. But what if I don't? That's the what if. And then it hit me. I don't want to go to hell. And I'm not gonna, according to the scripture. But if I had to suffer like this every day in order to not go to hell, let's say, and so it's a hypothetical, the moment I got to heaven, I'd say that was worth it. So I thought to myself, the worst I got to put up with this stuff is probably another 50, 60 years till I'm in my 80s, and then I'll die. And that may not be comforting to you, but when you're down, you think, hey, all I got to do is get to my 80s and die. I've already gotten this far. And now I'm even closer, 20 years away. And then I can go ahead and die, and then I won't suffer anymore. But hey, now this is turning negative, turning dark. Let's cheer this up.
Yeah,
sunshine, roses, butterflies, and daisies. Ice cream, happy puppies, kittens.
I am really
frolicking dolphins.
Now I'm just thinking of Flipper. I'm very happy that we took time to touch on anxiety. I think it's.
And now we're both very anxious.
I think it's a big problem in our world right now. I know it's rampant in our society. I know it's prevalent in our church. So, yeah, hopefully this has been helpful to you. Before we move on to our next segment, I have a note here to remind myself, which I wanted to do at the beginning, but I forgot. I have a correction from a previous episode.
Oh no!
I wouldn't make corrections if it wasn't a big deal, but this one was had to do with the attributes of God. So I feel the need to go back.
I don't even remember what we said.
We talked about.
How can you get it correct? Did someone correct you, or did
you
listen?
I listened and I said, "Oop."
See, if you just never listen,
that was inaccurate. We need to correct this. So we had a brief conversation about the attributes of God, and we talked about his communicable and incommunicable attributes. I couldn't remember
the word. I said immutable.
Mutable. We used immutable and
mutable. A word.
It is a word.
Mutable.
So God's
communicable and incommunicable.
God's immutability, which means he doesn't change.
Right.
So mutable comes from like mutate. Yes. So we're mutable. We're always changing. We're always becoming something new. Tomorrow I'll be slightly older. I'll have one less hair on my head. So God
probably with you'll have more than one.
Yeah, God is immutable, meaning he does not change. So his immutability is incommunicable. So the word communicable comes from communicate, or it's the same root as communicate, means like transferable. The only time you're likely to have heard it is like in a communicable disease. It means like a shareable disease. So,
but God does not share disease with us.
Right. So God has shareable attributes.
And disease is not one of them.
Communicable, like our ability to love, our reason, and then he has incommunicable, which are the ones that are solely for his deity. So
thank you for correcting. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Those words, that's why you're top shelf, Will.
Yeah.
You have to go figure out those words. I forget them. They come in and out.
Well,
But
it
I knew.
bothered me. I couldn't let it go.
Thank you. I'm glad you fixed it because I'll remember that. I was searching for the word at the time and it wasn't in there, and you have put it back in there. My theology professor from seminary would thank you. So let's study Luke for a little bit then.
Yeah. So we're in Luke 1.
So
And
open your Bibles.
open your Bibles. And last time we read up through verse 12. So
We actually started with 12 or 13. No, 12. We were talking about Zacharias, who, and I'm reading from the New American Standard. ESV will be close. New King James will be close. He is a priest, and he's older. We know that because his wife is past childbearing years, unless he's like 20 and married an old lady, but I don't think he is. I think he's old too. And he's finally got his chance to serve, not just in the temple, but to go into a holy place with incense inside the temple. So this is a big deal for him. And he's in there offering incense at the right and at the altar, and at the right side of it, an angel appears. He's supposed to be alone, and an angel shows up, and verse 12 said he was troubled and fear gripped him. So verse 13 says, but the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zacharias. Angels often lead with that.
that's how you know you're dealing with a good angel,
You know why they say that?
because they're scary.
Because you just wet your pants.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It's a little late, dude. They should say, don't be afraid. You go, what's that voice? It's an angel. I'm about to blow your mind, right? I mean, the first ones that show up on the hillside, they're like, don't be afraid. Too late. Too late. I have to go change my pants. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid, Zacharias. Said right before that, fear gripped him. For your petition has been heard. Now, petition, this is his prayer. And your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you will give him the name John. Now, we've already learned before this that she was barren back in verse 7, and they were both advanced in years. So he prayed a prayer that his wife would get pregnant. That's just thrown in there. Remember, these aren't Bible characters. These are human beings being told about in the Bible. People can really fret if they want a baby and don't seem to be able to get pregnant. Especially today that happens because people use artificial means of not getting pregnant and they don't know if they're going to get pregnant. But a lot of people don't even try but back then, it was pretty much your womanly duty to produce some heirs for your husband. That's what you did. And now that they love children, she wanted a child, and you can imagine her heartbreak at not being able to bear a child into her old age. So the angel shows up. First, he says, don't be afraid, to which I'd say you're a little late. Next, he says, I heard your prayers, and your wife's going to get pregnant, to which I'd also say you're very late. I mean, I'm old now.
Yeah.
Where were you 30 years ago when we asked? Well,
he might not have even prayed recently.
Oh, yeah, he gave up.
Because at a
It's
point, you're
over.
just like, well, I'm in
forget
my
it.
60s.
He's got his nieces and nephews he plays with at this point, and they're grown, having kids of their own. So now, yeah, but God, I don't know what to say except God wanted to answer this prayer this way. Shows something about our God, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, and I think later he's trying to make a statement. He waited long enough to where this is a miraculous baby.
He's showing it's a miracle. But and I want to get to that, but I want to go backwards and think of the emotions of the man. Sometimes we pray prayers and God doesn't give them to us.
Been there.
Right, why not? Well, if you're his son or daughter in Christ, he always hears and he always says yes. But yes to him means, yes, I hear you. Yes, I want to bless you. But it's going to be what's just right for you. And that could be a no to you. No, I'm not going to give you that baby. And you say, why? This isn't fair. I don't think it's best. You think it's best. It isn't. I know what's best. And to which you can only say, explain it to me. You can't demand that. He says, trust me. This is what's best for you. But other times he says yes, and you don't even know it. God is connecting Zacharias' earnest, faithful prayer with answering that prayer. His plan was to bring John the Baptist, who's coming from Elizabeth. He planned that long before. He prophesied of this man coming before Christ. But part of the means of that God planned was Zacharias would be an earnest young man asking God to give his wife a baby. And he had to struggle with the emotions of not getting the answer, and he thought ever. But that was God's plan. And so he's going to have a baby. And he says, this is what you're going to call him. You're going to call him John. And you will have joy and gladness, and many will rejoice at his birth. This is not said of Jesus' birth. Many will rejoice at his birth. This is says at John's birth. John is a very public. Jesus was not a very public birth, but John's was. And they're going to be contrasted as we go on.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about this, right? You got a public official of sorts. I mean, he's in the priestly order.
He's righteous. The Bible said that him and his wife.
He's involved in
people know him.
The temple duties.
And if you're older and you live an upright life, guess what? People like you.
Yeah.
You're trusted. And so everyone's going to be like, wow, did you hear?
Yeah.
And they're going to be excited for him. And for he will be great in the sight of the Lord, and he will drink no wine or liquor, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit. He told him the wine or liquor part because he thinks, think how it's going to save you on your bar tab. This kid's going to be cheap to own, and he's going to eat bugs. It's all about finances. No, it wasn't. Why is he not drinking wine or liquor? Probably because he's taking his own personal vow. Some people think this is the Nazirite vow. Maybe it is, but he seems to have his own path God cut just for him. And you're not going to cut your hair, and you're going to eat bugs.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we kind of know the end of this story. I mean, John's a little weird.
Oh, he's strange.
If he was a wine or liquor user, even if he was using it appropriately,
you might think that's why he's like that.
You might think he was weird because he's
there
a drunk.
Eating bugs.
Right.
Look at that drunk. He's a drunk.
Right.
He's not going to be a wino, but he will be filled with the Holy Spirit yet in his mother's womb. Filled with the Holy Spirit. This is something, as we go through this, we need to keep in our minds for later. This is not the same as what it's like to be filled with the Holy Spirit after the Pentecost for the Christian. Same Holy Spirit. He's going to be empowered. We'll get to that later. So let's just look at him. This is saying he's going to be empowered like the prophets. You have to think Old Testament. Remember, Samson was a judge, not a prophet, but let's take him anyway. When was he strong enough to fight? Not all the time, but the Holy Spirit would overtake him, and he would fight the lion or push over the building. You'd have the Spirit come upon a prophet, and he'd be able to prophesy or do something great. So what is being said is he's not going to be an ordinary man. He's going to be one who has the Holy Spirit power with him, starting when? In the womb. Which, by the way, is a very pro-life statement. We shouldn't have to say pro-life. Life should not be attacked in the most vulnerable place, the mother's womb. Nevertheless, he's got the Holy Spirit then. He can't have had faith in God yet, but he will have faith in God. God knows he will. God will give him the faith, and he'll believe. But the Holy Spirit is already going to be in there helping him. And he will turn many of the sons of Israel back to the Lord their God. His mission is not to go to the whole world and tell them to repent of sin. His mission is to go to Israel and tell them to repent of sin. It is he who will go as a forerunner, and by the way, as a forerunner is not in the text. That was thrown in there. So let's skip it. It is he that will go, verse 17, before him. For him, who's him? Who's him, Will? Look at verse 16 for the answer.
Jesus?
No, go to verse 16.
To the Lord their God.
The Lord their God. He will go before the Lord. Do you think Zacharias had any idea he was going to go before a man?
Not at this point.
It's really hard to understand, right? He's going to go before him. Looking back, we know what he means. He says he's going to go before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah. Elijah was the most miracle-working prophet not named Moses in the Old Testament. There were not a lot of miracles written in the Old Testament. Miracles, there are critics of Christianity and saying that, Oh, they read that and they thought miracles were common. No one in the Old Testament or, or the New thought miracles were common. That's why they wrote them down. And in the whole history of the Old Testament, there's only a few. And the one who did the most, besides Moses, who split seas, just splitting the seas, you win the miracle battle. But Elijah could do some amazing things. So to say Elijah means power, right? And then it says, to turn the hearts of the fathers back to their children. That is a direct quote from Malachi 4:6. Um, and it says, he will restore the hearts of the fathers and their children, and the hearts of their children to their fathers, so that I will not come and smite the land with a curse. So John the Baptist has to go before Jesus, so enough people have repented that he's not going to smite the land. That's what it seems to mean. And to the disobedient, and the disobedient to the attitude of righteousness. What a beautiful thing to do. You have people who are running the wrong way, and John's ministry is going to be he's going to be a very effective preacher, and people are going to say, I better stop sinning. I better turn over a new leaf and make ready a people prepared for the Lord. Any comments on that before we get to his reaction? Any thoughts?
You know, I don't have the mind of you. I don't. It's awesome to do studies with you. I'm not one to sit there and imagine what it would be like to be Zacharias
We'll do it
naturally,
now.
and now I'm doing it, and so I'm just trying to
Put
imagine.
your sandals on. Put
And
on that robe.
and an angel is
Your
saying
diaper's
all this
wet
to you,
because you're scared. Yeah.
right? And you're familiar. You're familiar with the Old Testament,
Oh, yeah. And you're a
so
righteous man.
it,
You've been around.
you're a priest. You know Malachi. You're you're picking up some of this, but not all of it. You know, it would just be freaky. I don't know, not freaky in a bad way. Like,
But look where he
are
goes.
you for real? Like for real?
For real. And actually, that's where he goes. Thank you for that segue into the next verse. Zechariah said to the angel, how will I know this? And then he says, for I am an old man and my wife is advanced in years. Now we got to get very careful here. Does God allow you to ask questions to answer your doubts?
Yes.
Okay, he does, but not if he's already given you sufficient information. Then you shouldn't ask the question.
Well, he allows you to, but that doesn't mean you should.
Right. But there are times you can. Remember, Gideon said, God, you really want me to do this? He says, yes. I'm not sure I can. He said, I'm going to show you how you can. And he had him do a fleece or whatever. Thomas,
Yeah. Jesus
I
let him.
won't believe. But here, Zechariah is about to get slapped because he has enough proof that he shouldn't be asking, how do I know this is true?
There's an angel standing in front
Yeah,
of you.
how do I
telling
know
you?
you're not lying to me? He literally asking an angel from God, how do I know you're not lying? And that's where he
Yeah,
fails.
it's offensive.
He's really not asking, how can this happen? He's saying, how do I know you're telling me the truth? And he says, how do I know this? How will I? For I'm an old man and my wife's advanced in years. And the angel answered and said, I'm Gabriel, pal, who stands in the presence of God. And I've been sent to speak to you and bring you this good news. What do you think? You think I'm spinning my wheels here? And behold, you shall be silent and unable to speak until the day when these things take place, because you didn't believe my words, punk, which will be fulfilled in their proper time. So he gets out. Now, God still loves him. Talk about discipline.
Chastisement.
He's got it right there. You won't talk. And people were waiting for Zacharias and wondering at the delay. You're supposed to, they do this every year at the temple. Zacharias isn't normally there, but you do the incense, you come out. He's not coming out. He's old. Maybe he died in there. Maybe he's having a heart attack. Who's going to go in? We can't go in. It's not holy. God might kill us. He's in there. Come out. They're out there. Come out. And they're wondering at his delay in the temple. But when he did come out, he was unable to speak to them. And they realized he'd seen a vision in the temple, and he kept making signs. How did they know he saw a vision? He probably was like doing his best angel, halo, heaven. It was probably great to watch.
His eyeballs are like 3 sizes too big.
Yes. Then he looks, let's go on. And they didn't have iPhones. Would have been awesome. That would have been viral. Zechariah's coming out. That would have been viral. Someone would have put it on there. Instagram and YouTube, everyone would have seen him flailing around. This old man, uh, but he couldn't talk. And when the days of his priestly service were ended, he went back home. And after these days, Elizabeth, his wife, became pregnant because he couldn't talk. He had nothing else to do. So he romanced his wife. And she kept herself in seclusion for 5 months, saying, "This is the way the Lord has dealt with me in the days when he looked with favor upon me to take away my disgrace." She thought she was disgraced from among men. Did you want to say something on that? Your body language. So for 5 months, she hid herself away. Now look what happens next. Now the 6th month of what? Verse 26 says, now the 6th month of what, Will?
Her pregnancy.
Of her pregnancy. So she's got a bump. She's been hiding it away.
She got more than a bump, probably
Yeah,
at this
she's
point.
been wearing big robes, but now there it is. And she's like, God's taken away my disgrace, but it's pretty embarrassing for an old lady to be walking around pregnant. I bet you Zechariah was walking around the men going, "Hey, so, Zechariah, you old dog, you had it in you all along." Now, in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel, same angel, right? He's on baby announcement duty. That's his job. He's the baby announcement angel. Now, in the 6th month, he should have brought flowers when he showed up. Oh, here you go. Angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city of Galilee called Nazareth. And by the way, Nazareth is a nothing town. There's nothing there. There's still nothing there. If it wasn't for Jesus being born there, there'd be nothing. The Catholics dropped the church there. So you can make some money off of tourists and worship. To a city of Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin engaged to a man whose name was Joseph, of the descendants of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. Why does it matter that he was a descendant of David?
Because it's prophesied that the kingly line of David is never going to be broken.
That's right. So God promised David, you will always have an eternal kingdom and a king on the throne. Well, there hasn't been a Davidic king on that throne since the Babylonian captivity in around 600 BC. It's been a long time. So, and coming in, so this is an announcement of a king, really. And coming in, he said to her, "Greetings, favored one, the Lord is with you." But she was perplexed at this statement and kept pondering of what kind of salutation it was. Now, verse 29 is how we know Luke talked to Mary, or the Holy Spirit told him this, but more likely, Luke said he interviewed everybody. He no doubt knew Mary and said, "Well, what was it like when the Lord said that to you?" She says, "I was sitting there thinking, why are you calling me favored one?" Right? A lot of mythology has been falsely brought up by the Catholic Church over the years to remake Mary into a demigod. She was not without sin. She was not born without sin. She didn't know that she was special. And there's a humility to that too, but it's a shock. No, Zechariah was like, "I'm in the temple, I'm a priest. Of course an angel's talking to me, but I'm not going to believe him." But you have this humble girl in this nothing town, and she goes, she seems to be responding correctly. "Why me? Who am I that you're going to talk to me? The Lord is with me. He's on my side. The Lord is with you" is a blessing necessary in the Old Testament to get out of Egypt. It was a blessing that Moses actually had to cut a deal with God with. God didn't have to cut the deal. Moses had to give into it. He said, "We're not going without you." He says, "You're not." To be with God is to be as blessed as you can be. And so here's this angel saying, "You are favored." Who favors me? Heaven favors me? Wouldn't it shock you if someone showed up and said, "By the way, heaven's impressed with you. They see big things in you." You'd be like, "Me?" Now, some people say, "No, they're right." Well, you are never going to see an angel. A demon will come talk to you because that's pride. But she's not proud. She was perplexed and kept pondering. And the angel said, "Don't be afraid, Mary." And she must not have been as afraid, "for you have found favor with God." Second time. "And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall name him Jesus." So this angel not only announces the baby, he announces the names. Correct?
Yep.
"And he will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David." What do you see in verse 32, Will? Pick that one apart. How many descriptions of the Lord do you see there?
Great.
He's going to be great.
Son of the Most High.
which is Son of God, right?
And the Lord God,
Lord is a pretty big word to the Jews. They don't just throw that one around for anybody. He's going to be the Kyrios in Greek.
and he's going to be the king, the Davidic king. So I see 4 different.
The Lord God will give him the
Oh, and
Davidic
the Lord
kingdom.
God will give him. So 3.
He'll
I'm
give him
sorry.
the throne of his father David. So now she knows right then there's going to be a king. Why don't you read the rest? Let's keep going.
And he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and his kingdom will have no end.
Now, what's house of Jacob mean?
That's the house of Israel. So
Yes.
Jacob starts off as Jacob. Then when he wrestles with the Lord and hurts his hip, he gets named Israel, which is the one who wrestles with God.
That's right.
And Israel's then the moniker from then thereafter for
Very
the Jews.
interesting that Jacob, before that, had lied to his father and said he was who?
His brother.
His brother Esau. He wore a hairy thing because he wanted to get the blessing. So he lied about his identity, and then was it 14 years later? He's leaving to go back home. His father's not there anymore, and he's leaving to go home. And he wrestles God, and he asks God, "Who are you?" Right? It's interesting juxtaposed to his father had asked him, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm Esau," and he goes to God and says, "Who are you?" And God doesn't tell him. He says, "No, what's your name?" And he says, "My name's Jacob." He goes, "No, it ain't. It's Israel." And God changes his identity right there to Israel. So when it says Jacob, it's the Jews.
Yep.
So it says his kingdom will have no end. How can a human king have a kingdom with no end? He can't, because he's going to die. So this is a foreshadowing of the everlasting kingdom of Christ.
Picking up in 34.
Yep.
Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I am a virgin?"
Now, what's the difference between her objections and Zechariah's, who said, "How do I know this is true since I'm old?"
She implicitly believes him
Right?
by saying, "How can this be?" It means I believe you that it's going to happen, but I don't understand
The mechanics.
the mechanics. I'm
Yeah.
a virgin.
He said, "How do I know this is true?" She didn't.
Yeah.
She didn't say, "How do I know it's true?" She's like, "I know where babies come from. I'm a virgin, but I'm not stupid. How can a baby come out of me? I'm betrothed to some guy too, by the way."
The angel answered and said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. And for that reason, the Holy Child shall be called the Son of God."
Wow.
And
Now that would blow you away, wouldn't it? There's nothing sexual about this, by the way, and anyone who hints at that is perverted and blasphemous. There's nothing sexual about it. God makes life, and He doesn't have to do anything sexual. And he
I mean,
just
he
does
made
it.
all initial life with the power of his word. So,
Yes, that's right. And there are some who say, "Well, did He use Mary's egg?" Absolutely. He used Mary's body, but He didn't use Adam. And sin is transmitted apparently through the fathers, not the mother. So you women out there, remember that when you're in an argument, that should trump card for you. And so Jesus is not going to have sin nature like we do. But his mama is going to be Mary. So read the next.
verse 36, "And behold, even your relative Elizabeth has also conceived a son in her old age, and she who was called barren is now in her 6th month."
Stop right there. You know women. Well, wait. You have met women. You know their names. You don't understand women. But you've observed women. I've observed women.
I apprehend women. I don't comprehend them.
So we need to stop here, and a woman would catch this right away. A man has to think about it a minute. I mean, if an angel stopped and told me these things, not except for me getting pregnant part, but the other parts, you're going to be the father of the Most High, and you're betrothed. I would be thinking about politics and conquest and religion and philosophy and theology, and right.
Yeah.
She thinks practically, how's it going to happen? Then, if then they gave me the news, by the way, your cousin's pregnant, I would think, can we get back to talking about what my kid's going to be? What would a young lady think to find out her relative Elizabeth is pregnant? Well, from what you know of women,
Joy?
how do women act when they find out their friend is pregnant?
Happy?
They're ecstatic. Even my little granddaughter Lucy, when she found out her aunt was pregnant, she lost her mind. I'm like, you're 7. Who teaches you people this? And little boys are like, eh. Um,
What's for dinner?
so she's learning Elizabeth. By the way, Elizabeth lives right near Jerusalem. So when we get to the part about when we're going to explode the Christmas mythology that Jesus didn't have a place in a hotel, which is stupid. There's a relative right there, Elizabeth. But we'll get to that later. Um, but this is exciting to her. She's in her 6th month. She's been hiding this out. Nobody knows this. An angel's telling you. And then he says, for nothing will be impossible with God. I've heard some people say we're supposed to take that as it's impossible to have nothing with God. We're supposed to read it. Nothing is impossible. Something must happen. That's cute. Nice wordplay, but it's not the context. What he's saying is it's not impossible for God to make an old lady pregnant.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying. Just like Sarah, right? And Mary said, behold the bondslave of the Lord. May it be done to me according to your word. And the angel departed. So what do you think of her response, verse 38? How's that strike you?
Humble.
Behold the bondslave of the Lord. If that's what you want.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
Now, we're going to stop here, but why don't you read at least, and we'll start with the next verse, but read the next verse anyway, just as a foreshadowing.
Now at this time Mary arose and went in a hurry to the hill country, to a city of Judah.
And that hill country is near where Bethlehem is. She arose, didn't travel at night on a donkey. She probably went with some other people. Why did she run there?
Because the angel just...
No, to see Elizabeth.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, because she wants to share.
Yeah, the angel didn't tell her go see her.
No.
This is natural, human. I'm going to go see my cousin. I can't believe she's pregnant.
Yeah.
She's excited for Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is going to have quite a story. This, again, when you look forward to the Christmas narrative, this idea that these two lonely people trekked out alone across the desert where they've never been to go to a place where they knew no one and the hotel was full. It's not in the Bible. None of that's in the Bible. It's all the Christmas myth that for some reason no one questions. Some do. I'm not the only one. Trust me. If you search, you'll see a lot of scholars do. What's that? No, it's not in the Bible at all. And we'll get to that right here in Luke, because it's where the story happens.
J.J. Puff was shocked.
J.J. Puff.
He's
said
a normal American Christian.
I'll give you a hint. The word inn is better translated upper room. If you change one word in Luke, the word inn, I-N-N, to upper room, as it's translated everywhere else, you will see all of a sudden, it'll hit you that the innkeeper was made up, the hotel, that they traveled alone, all that stuff was made up.
So stay tuned in.
Stay tuned in for that, because not just J.J. Puff, you too will be freaked out.
Oh, I already know this, but I didn't for a long time. Everybody knows the American Christmas myth.
It's not just American; it's worldwide. I think people like it. It caught on, and no one questions it because they don't think it theologically matters, and maybe it doesn't. But I'm just a stickler for whatever the Scripture says. Yeah. I have been checked. People throughout the years said, I don't know if that's true. And then they'll go Google, because you can, and you'll find a Catholic scholar, another scholar, someone, they'll point out, if you look closer, I'm not unique in saying it. Yeah. But, even John Piper, the great John Piper, who pays attention to Greek, wrote a poem from the point of view of the innkeeper who turned away Jesus. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is silly. But hey, now I'm criticizing John Piper. Lightning will strike me. Because he's the Protestant Pope.
So that's it for our Bible study segment. We do love John Piper.
I do.
Yeah. We love
John.
Alistair Begg, too.
I love Alistair Begg and Pope John.
Yeah. So that brings us to segment number 3.
Which is?
Cultural commentary and current events.
Well, I want to talk about Mike Johnson. What do you know about this guy?
Almost nothing, just like everyone else in the country. So Mike Johnson's the new Republican Speaker of the House. I know that. I
So,
know he's from Louisiana, or at least
yeah.
serves in Louisiana right now. And I know that he's a professing Christian and has voted for bills to support the Answers in Genesis ministry before. He helped with public money build the Ark Encounter. That's all I've heard in the
You've heard a
news.
lot.
So this is what
So,
I know.
so I'm not. This isn't for the political that I want to talk about. It's the bigger picture. So we just to recap, we had this guy McCarthy, who was the Speaker of the House, and McCarthy had to fight to get the speakership because there was a lot of people who thought he's just same old Washington, but he finally got it. But then he didn't seem tough enough to Matt Gaetz and about 7 other people. And so they challenged him. The Democrats voted with Matt Gaetz, and he was fired. And a lot of people on the GOP side said, "Oh, Matt Gaetz is horrible. I can't believe he did this." And they freaked out. Others said, "No, maybe it's good. It's a change."
We had some of those freaker outers in our church.
Yeah, I didn't freak out at all. I thought, finally, something interesting is happening because no matter what those people do, they just spend all our money. Or they don't even spend our money. We don't even have any money. They're borrowing money to spend that we don't have to do stupid things with it. And I don't have much trust anymore. I'm way more cynical than I used to be about government helping things. But that happened, and then they said, okay, let Jim Jordan do it. I thought, great idea. I like Jim Jordan. Wrestler from Ohio, good, solid conservative. Nah, he can't do it. Steve Scalise can't do it. None of them could do it. Then all of a sudden, this guy Mike Johnson comes out of nowhere. And I'm like, well, he looks boring. Sorry, Mike. He looks like a staid guy. He's not bombastic like Jim Jordan, who's interesting. But he kind of got through because no one knows who he is because he carries himself in such a dignified, diplomatic manner. He never says anything undisciplined or whatever. So then you look into him and you find out he's a solid Southern Baptist and has real pull in that denomination. And he's just a solid Christian man, right? And he's diplomatic. He's good at getting people to get along. So I thought, wow, how did that happen? And you might think, well, it's good that God put a good man there. And I think in general it is. But on the other hand, it may not work out the way anyone expects. And this is where I want to jump in. The reaction to him as people are trying to figure out who he is, there is a real narrative being pieced together by a lot of people, and it has been being pieced together for several years now, and our dear president is one of the people doing it, to try to lump together a group of people called MAGA people. I don't think there are anything called MAGA people. What they mean is people who would vote for Trump. America First people, right? People who say our policy should put American interests first. Yes, that is a lot of Trumpist people, but it's not just Trump people. It's patriots who think, so it's both. But then they're taking all the Christians who believe the Bible and they want to make sure they're in there, and tying the bridge to tie them all together is these two words, Christian nationalism, which no one even said a few years ago. And no one even really knows what it means because it could mean one thing to one person, another thing to another person. I don't like the label because no one can define it. I don't want to be called something I can't define. But it's just a fake label anyway. And all these pieces are being tied together so that you can have a political party called extreme that can be crushed. Now, that's the narrative on the left. And I was reading a little bit about Mike Johnson from Rolling Stone, which is not a magazine worth reading. He says, talking about a prayer that he found Johnson saying before he was speaker. The prayer, and I quote from Rolling Stone, the prayer calls underscore the new House Speaker's alarming alignment. Woo! We're alarmed with Christian nationalism. The extremist movement that holds America is not a secular democracy, but was founded as a Christian nation and should be governed and uphold a fundamentalist morality. They also provide fresh evidence. This is new evidence. This came out of the oven of Johnson's apocalyptic worldview, in which he sees America as a, quote, disastrous, calamitous times and hanging by a thread. It raises questions about whether the Republican, who's now second in line for the presidency, is leveraging his power not just to avoid a government shutdown, but to appease an angry deity and to avoid more permanent heavenly shutdowns. So they're taking where he was talking about in a prayer meeting the state of America, and we could be under God's judgment for our sin, which is a pretty common Christian idea for nations throughout Christian history. And they're saying that he's here hooked to appease an angry deity. And then there's another article they wrote on him, which talks about the green. I didn't even know about this flag, the green tree flag on white.
Oh yeah, Appeal to Heaven is George Washington's
Yeah,
first.
well, now they're saying that's a sign that connects Mike Johnson, because he has it outside his office, to the new apostolic Reformation people, which are a bunch of crazy prophets, right? Now, to be frank, a lot of people in that weirdness, right? The International House of Prayer wackos and all the wacko, and I'm going to call them wackos in Kansas City prophets, are whacked. Don't listen to them. Don't go to their place. And all the whacked people who came out and said they had prophecies that Trump was going to win and they were wrong. Well, he's tying them together.
Yeah.
And I don't even think he's representing the wackos fairly. He's definitely not representing Mike Johnson fairly. You take those and you take Dark Brandon's speech, which was when Biden got out in front of the Nazi-looking symbol and said, MAGA people are trying to kill us all and white supremacists. They're telling a story that there's a bunch of Americans who are enemies of the state, insurrectionists. They're putting it with a January 6th thing, and they're throwing all the Christians in. Now, if this frightens you, fast forward through this part of the podcast, but it should get our attention, because first, we're not being represented correctly. We're just normal Christians and we are normal Americans, and it's normal as an American to love your country and love freedom and love morality. That's not weird and new and extreme.
And not like aggregation of government power.
Yeah, not like a lot of government power. But they're starting to spell us out as an extremist enemy. So if people who think like that are in power, they will look at us like we're
having an effect.
Well, they'll look at us like the enemy. Normally in America, if you're in power, you're supposed to look at all your citizens as the good guys, even if you don't agree with them.
Yes.
But they're looking at us as the enemy of the country. And Mike Johnson, yeah, I think he is a good Christian man. He's going to do a good job, and he won't embarrass anyone. But they're going to demonize him, and they're going to try to demonize us with him. The answers to what we have in life are not going to be political. We should be involved in politics, but we really need to be involved in our churches, in our gospel, building good family, bringing the gospel to the world. I think Christians should run for office because we need decent-minded people, and even non-Christians that are decent-minded I'd vote for. But this idea of demonizing an entire group of people as the enemy, it's never happened in my lifetime. And I've always been kind of pay attention to politics since I was an adult. I've never even thought about doing it to the left, saying we need to see them as extremists who are the enemy, all need to be put in jail. Turns out they're all committing crimes and they should be put in jail, but don't worry, that won't happen because no one's paying attention. But anyway, there's my thoughts on Mike Johnson. I think he's a good guy. I don't think he's extreme. I don't think he'll come out with any weird prophecies. For goodness sake, he's a Southern Baptist. If he spoke in tongues, it'd be by accident. If he had a prophecy, it would be an accident. He'd apologize. He's not that guy. He looks like an accountant. He's very diplomatic. He tries to get along with everybody. He's not an extremist at all. There's nothing extreme about him at all. But pro-life is now thought to be extreme. Praying for your nation is thought to be extreme. Thinking the LGBTQ mafia is abnormal is extremist. Thinking trans is, and by the way, that leads to one other thought I want to get us to, and that's transhumanism. Do you know what transhumanism is?
I do.
You want to explain it? Give us a top shelf explanation of
All right.
transhumanism.
Quick layout of transhumanism ties into evolution. So we touched on evolution, I think, 2 podcasts ago, a couple episodes ago. If you hold to mm, the common view these days that we evolved from single-celled organisms into invertebrates, into whatever, we're in one way or another related to every other living thing on the planet because we all came from one singular life form and evolved into the species we see. Then from a rationale point of view, you can project that evolution out further.
That's
I mean,
right.
if we can get from a bacteria cell or a protozoa to me, a human,
We're not finished.
we're not finished.
We're in transition now.
We're always in
We're actually
transition.
not really humans. We're humans for a moment.
And so transhumanism is people trying to, fancy word, extrapolate, project out what the next higher level of life form might be, since we would look at ourselves as a higher life form, more complex life form than a single cell. And most of the focus in transhumanism, what is the next higher level of life form, would involve computers.
Technology.
Technology. We'll
Okay,
say
I'm going to stop you for a minute.
Was that a fair definition?
Well, I'm not an expert. That is the one I understand
Okay.
because it's really a new word for all of us.
Yeah.
Most people never deal with the word. We don't talk about it in regular. Are there people in the world who use the word, and why do they use it that you know of?
Yeah, there's a couple really famous people. Most of their names are escaping me right now, but they're actively looking at ways to make computer systems that mimic what we understand about the brain, so that we can try to download a brain onto a computer chip.
There are people working on it, and not so. I don't want to separate the world into elites and farmers, okay? But there's some very powerful, wealthy people who use terms like transhumanism. I'm not trying to make you paranoid or anything, or conspiracy theory or all that crap, but it's really out there. There are people trying to do things. Now, let's talk about a few of them. One is our good friend Elon Musk, who I take as a general ally to freedom because of what he did for Twitter, restoring some free speech out there. I don't see him as the devil. I like to say he's the Antichrist.
Which is a joke.
Which is a joke, unless he really is. And then, look at me, I was right.
But right now, it's a joke.
One to the chest, kill me fast. So he has got Neuralink. Do you know what Neuralink is?
I'm very familiar with Neuralink.
Why don't you tell everyone what Neuralink is?
So Neuralink, its first use is as a prosthesis. So prosthesis is like a leg, like a fake leg is a prosthesis. It's something mechanical you make that you can connect to your body to help improve the way your body functions. So we do that with amputees. There are other forms of prostheses. Prosthetics. You might know somebody that has a cochlear implant, where if they go deaf, they have a device that's put in their head to help them hear better, right? Connects to their auditory nerve. So Neuralink started as a way to implant sensors in your brain. The first useful step they're trying to make is so that your thoughts could control physical things in the world.
So that'd be a good thing, right?
That'd be a good thing. Like if you could make a synapse fire in your brain, and then you had some wires in there, that could trigger an output over here, and you could turn on the TV by thinking about turning on the TV. That's maybe an extreme example, but there are
not that extreme.
There are legitimate things that they're trying to do with that, like for people with brain injuries,
or even within your body.
Say
you have Parkinson's. I have an uncle who has Parkinson's, and it was really bad.
Yeah.
And they actually they put some electronic thing in there that stimulates, and he's got a lot more control. But that would be the Flintstones. That is the
beginning.
That's small.
Yep.
They're actually thinking they can maybe even return movement to extremities of people who are paralyzed.
Yep.
So there's a lot of positive things, as well as if you had an electronic things outside of you, like a chair that you can't move anything, but you can make it move with your mind or something. So there's a FDA has approved Neuralink now for studies, and they're actually right now taking volunteers. and they're having no problem getting them. People are lining up. Sign me up. So there's another part. Let's go back to AI. When we think of artificial intelligence, normally we've gone towards computers taking over the world, or, like some computer figures out humans are bad, which we know because the Bible says so. They say we must kill you all and to make a perfect world. Well, we're not here. But another expression that might be more realistic is closer to where you went with downloading the brain. If you could put into your head or neck Google search, and it could receive your memories and thoughts, you could have a hard drive in your brain. So someone, you'd never get stumped on a history class.
If you'd seen it once, it's there. Or if you have connection to the
If you
internet,
have connection
if you
to
have
the
Wi-Fi.
And this may sound odd, but there's people now who are lobbying, thinking that they're anticipating how bad guys could use this to oppress us, because you can see that, how we need some sort of AI Bill of Rights, so that we have control over what's in our brain. So the equivalent of, you take your phone, this could be your AI thing. It's just mine. No one can do it but me. I put it in my pocket, and I control what happens in my brain. And it will memorize my thoughts, memorize my memories, save them even after I'm dead, but also allow me to, if somebody says, hey, what happened?
Remember that time in 1977?
Well, they can go back to 1777, because I have access to all the encyclopedias in the world inside my brain. And so they're going that direction too. So what they're thinking of doing is fundamentally, and then you can just start using your imagination. You take virtual reality. Right now it's these big old goggles. It will not be long till people laugh at those goggles, because it just won't be long till miniaturization means it's...
Oh, if you got electrodes in your brain and you find a way to pipe the right electrical signals to your optical nerves, you could just be projecting virtual reality in your brain without anything in front of your eyes.
Yeah, or even, let's say they don't even get that sophisticated. You have that in your head, and there is an electronic, say, optical lens that you just stick on your eye, right? Like you would if you had to correct your vision today. You can do that, but instead you're putting these lenses on your eye that are wired. We're using the word wired. There'll be no wires. They are computerly connected. You could have, you can make your world beautiful. So here's the point of transhumanism. There's a push to get... It used to be the term was singularity, and that no one uses, but some people do. I think transhumanism is now the word. We're going to move beyond being human. There's even some guy I saw who says he's a transhumanist Christian, because he's going to help guide us into our next thing, which is, I guess you can put the Christian as an adjective in front of anything. I think it's stupid, but let's add another equation. So you have people thinking, if we combine technology with humanity, we can we can make evolution go faster, move to our next Superman, right? You add CRISPR technology and genetics, right? So now we can have designer babies, as they're called, making sure they have exactly... You can order a baby. I want them this tall, this color eyes, good at music, whatever. Boom. Add what we call the the current sexual cultural revolution. How does the fact that a woman can say, I'm not a woman, and we will punish you if you don't agree, add that together, that is a definite step towards transhumanism. In other words, if I give up on the idea that I am
a boy or a girl,
I'm thinking immutable.
Yeah.
Immutable in my being. I am what God made me, right? I have the DNA I have, and I am what I am, from not only just from being a male, but everything about me. So now everything is
controllable,
mutable. To use the word I misused last time, I can change anything. I can change into a girl. I can change into anything I want. What we're losing is humanity. This is a rebellion against the human race right in front of our face. And we're told I mean, we live in a death culture already. We're killing the family unit. The most healthy way to grow a human is to have a mommy and a daddy in a home married to each other. Okay, we're killing that. And we're killing the idea of having babies. We're killing millions of babies before they're born. We're killing old people. Wherever there's government medicine, we'll kill someone for you. Um, and and we have environmental alarmists saying we got to save the planet, and that means cutting the Earth down to 500 million people. Who is that? I think that's Gates, right? So what do we do with the other 7.5 billion people here? Well, they have to go. It's a culture of death we live in. We're saying gays can get married, which means it's a culture of death. You're not producing any life. And now you don't even have to be a sex. We are eliminated mankind. We literally are surrounded by, people don't realize it, but it is a satanic web of bad thinking that we swim in, you and me, and JJ over here. Thoughts?
Everybody should read C.S. Lewis's Abolition of Man. That was my first thought.
Good point, because that was his point.
That was his point. He didn't have all the language that we're going to talk, like all the things that
But
we
he
just
saw
talked
it.
about. But he saw it happening in the 1940s.
I read that hideous strength, and I didn't understand what he was saying at the time, but he was saying the same thing.
Yeah, and essentially it's
So what should the Christian do?
profess truth and don't buy into any of that stuff.
So here's what I'm going to say. Here's my
I
answer.
was kind of curious. Yeah, where are we going? What's the point?
Remember Noah.
Remember Noah. Ooh, I like it.
Why? You know where I'm going?
He was the last faithful remnant. He's the faithful remnant.
His whole society was going one direction, and it said, and he was righteous. The pressure to give in to bad thinking
is tremendous.
Because we're social beings.
Yeah.
You don't have to think you're weird because you don't agree with the zeitgeist or these people pushing the Christians as we're the terrorists or something stupid like that, trying to take over the nation when we really just want to be left alone. You don't have to go with a transhumanist. You don't have to go with a trans. You can say, all that's wrong. How do I know? Because I know the Lord and I know the Bible. It's just wrong. It doesn't matter if the world agrees with you. God is watching. God rescued Noah and his family. If his 3 daughters-in-law, they were lucky to marry into that family. Good move. And he rescued them. And he has us. I think the reason there's going to be a lot of falling away of Christians is simply because the world is they'd rather it all makes sense with what it says out there, right? That's the great falling away at the end, which leads me to the Pope. What were you thinking of the Pope?
No.
Well, I was thinking of the Pope recently because the Pope is just blowing it. I have on here stuff about immigration. I don't want to talk about that now. I'll talk another time. But the Pope is, so what he did was he fired this Catholic bishop. Have you heard about this Bishop Strickland?
Negative.
Why do you care? Something's happening in the Catholic Church. It's huge. The Roman Catholic Church, not the Eastern Orthodox, which is just as ancient. And the Roman Church is falling apart. It's falling apart. And part of me says it should. The whole idea of a pope is anathema to me. The idea that one man is holier than the rest and can speak new words of God, ex cathedra, that means out of the chair, and that are infallible. That is problematic on so many levels. The Catholic Church has at its very heart, a belief in Christ, and many people who love Christ in it. I won't say they don't, but a lot of their teachings are just horrible. They've reinvented Mary into a deity, prayers to saints, the making of sacraments your means of grace. You got transubstantiation of a wafer into a real body, having to pray to Mary on a bead to get a blessing, all this silliness. And all of it is endorsed by popes throughout the centuries. And popes have traditionally been pretty yucky men. There have been some decent ones, like I think everyone liked Pope John Paul, even me, but as a man, but I don't like his position. But you had Pope Leo, who was one of the Medicis during the time of Luther, and he was pretty much into orgies and killing off anyone who didn't like him and building St. Peter's Cathedral with money he stole through indulgences and you have a lot of rotten guys. So having a pope is bad in the first place, but this pope is a Marxist from South America, and he's wobbly as jelly. He doesn't want to be caught. He wants to throw doubt on traditional Christian views, but act like he's not. Like he says cagey things about gay marriage and cagey things about this and cagey things about that. Behind the scenes, he's replacing a lot of the top cardinals with people like him, though. It's a very political thing. What does that mean? It means people who choose the next pope may pick an even more leftist.
Yep.
And just recently, he put out a letter that was or a document just as silly, that said it's possible that you can, as a trans, which it doesn't exist, by the way. I want to know that there's no such thing as a trans person. People say, I found out I was a trans person. You can't find out you're a trans person.
There is. It's called transvestite.
Yes, or you have if you're a man and you're doing this, most likely it's a fetish, a mental illness you want, you get sexually aroused. Gender dysphoria has always been known as a mental illness, and it happens mostly to boys. Today, what we mostly see are two things: drag queens, not gender dysphoria, and confused girls, which we've never seen, who are mutilating themselves and being manipulated. You cannot become something else. that is transhumanism without the electronics. You're just cutting parts off yourself or taking hormones. If you're going to take hormones, it should be to grow hair. That's what I say. No, just kidding.
Or muscles.
Or muscles. No, just kidding. Don't do that. Don't do that either. So they're saying that you can, in certain situations, you could be a trans godfather or be a trans, and you don't have to stop being trans, and you can be baptized. The difficulty is if someone comes and they say, I'm a trans, what we say to them is, Christ died for your sins, just like any other person. And now you need to live like what you are. If you're a boy, you live like a boy. If you're a girl, you live like a girl. And we'll love you just like you are. Even if you're a girl who's grown a beard and mutilated your body, we're going to love you like anybody else, but you're a girl. Well, the Catholic Church has always held to strict sexual standards on gay marriage and these, but he's pushing those boundaries and rewarding others who push them, like the German popes or the German cardinals. So then you got this guy here, Strickland. He's a lot of Catholics are going to be drawn to him because some even called him America's cardinal or America's bishop, because he pretty much just said, we need to hold the line, and the Pope's doing it wrong. So the Pope called him and said, you need to resign. And Strickland said, I'm not going to resign. He said, then you're fired. And this almost never happened. And there's no good reason to fire him except for Pope thing. He doesn't want to be criticized by him. Something's happening in the Catholic Church. I think we're headed, I don't know. I don't have the signs or anything, but what does the church look like before schism? I think it looks like this. I think you're going to have a lot of faithful Catholics, and even if you're a faithful Catholic listening to me, you're already insulted by everything I said about your Pope and these false teachings, but I want you to know that I believe there are saved people who love the Lord, who are Catholic. I still don't justify those bad teachings, but believe that Christ is their Lord, He died for their sins, and they're born again. But they're really not liking this Pope. And if they think getting rid of him is going to change it, it won't. Because he's putting cardinals, and cardinals choose the Pope. He's putting his guys in place, which is pretty famous. That's what Leo did. Leo's a good Italian. He literally, when he came into the Vatican, people started to die. Or into power. I don't know if they were using the Vatican then for that. I can't remember now. I can't remember my history. But he started, I think it was Vatican. They were killing people. If you didn't like Pope Leo, you were dead. And he put his guys in place. Well, this Pope isn't killing people, but he is using the political process. And there's one other thing there that's happening in Rome, and this is, most people don't know it. It's really a thing called the Lavender Mafia. This has been a purposeful infiltration of gay priests to the bishop and hopefully to the cardinal level, because they want to change the position on gay marriage by getting a pope and some cardinals who go that way. And yes, it's called the Lavender Mafia, and they have often been accused and likely are responsible for a lot of the cover-ups of gay priests who like to abuse little boys. In other words, in the Middle Ages, the priests were known not to be celibate like they were supposed to, but you always knew who their mistress was. Well, a lot of gay men went in on purpose into the Catholic Church to be priests, and so they're diddling little boys, because that's what, I'm not saying all gay men do, but let's just be honest, there's a percentage of, a high percentage of men who molest little boys are gay. I'm not saying the high percentage of gays molest little boys, don't get me wrong, but a high percentage of people who molest little boys are gay. And so you had the Lavender Mafia covering for them, moving them around, stuff like that. You might think, all this is crazy. It sounds like a novel. It's in there, and you can find it. And Catholic sources, it'll tell you. Well, now that one of their guys is Pope, there's no other way to look at it. One of their guys is Pope. I'm not saying he's Lavender Mafia, but no doubt they like him. He's just a Marxist from Argentina. So I think we're going to see something in our lifetime that equals the schism of 1100. And you all know the schism of 1100. You know that one, don't you, JJ? The schism of 1100. He's big on it. You're big on it. When the Catholic Church finally busted East and West because of dueling popes, you can have people. I think we're going to see the fall of the Catholic Church as we know it. It won't go away. There'll be 2 different ones, 3 different ones, 4 different ones. Now, that's just a guess, and I put a 10% probability on that. So I'm not saying it's a prophecy from God. I don't have those. But I just, how long can this go on?
Well, my thought,
you're firing bishops.
my thought is, so some of the stuff,
This Pope blessed Nancy Pelosi,
I know.
who says she loves dead babies.
I know. So I have very close friend, family friend with their whole family. They are definitely one of these faithful Catholics. They love Jesus.
And they'll hate me.
They're
Don't let
definitely
them
saved.
listen to this.
You know, you might be surprised. I think there's a few things that you said that they're definitely, he would argue vehemently with you. But he's probably not going to be that offended by you going after the Pope, because he doesn't like this Pope. Now,
he won't like me going after transubstantiation.
He won't like you going after transubstantiation.
But that is a huge error.
But
huge error.
Whether or not it turns into schism in the church, schism meaning whether the Catholic Church is going to split into 2 different churches, like we've seen so many other denominations.
And the church did that before.
They've done it before.
1100.
Whether that's going to happen, or another thing that might happen, which I think could be a great blessing, is opportunities to correct bad teaching in faithful Catholics who are sick and tired of the way the Catholic Church is going, and they're going to be looking for other opportunities.
And then that's why I say, if you're a Catholic and you love Jesus and you live around us, come to Harvest Church. You'll be welcome. We have a lot of people who used to be Catholics.
Yeah.
God will not kill you.
Yeah, and this family friend of mine, he is by no means a fan of Pope Francis or what's going on, or of the new LGBTQ gay agenda in the Catholic Church. It offends him greatly.
It's been there for years.
And
they've been working on this for decades.
And it's definitely, I've seen it in him, a softening or an openness to Protestantism.
Well, listen, now I was speaking in the family like because I am a Protestant by the strictest sense. I'm not in a Protestant denomination, but I am a Protestant in that historical sense. And there's a reason for that. I don't apologize for not agreeing with a pope, but I'm talking like I'm talking in family. So if I were to talk as an ambassador out to Catholics, what I would say is this. I wouldn't say what I just said. I don't think they're listening to this. But what I would say is this. Your key is the Word of God. Catholics know that the Bible is the Word of God. Read it. Don't just read what's in the Missal. Don't just read what's in the Mass. Don't just read on the schedule. Read the New Testament for yourself, slowly and prayerfully. Don't ask a priest what it means. Don't ask anyone at first. Just read it and let it say what it says, because the authority is in the Scripture, and you will see it's going to cross your Catholic doctrine, and then you'll have to choose, which one do I believe? And if you choose the Scripture, you'll find freedom. That's what Martin Luther did, and that's what we should all do. If you're in the United Methodists read the Bible and you'll stop being a United Methodist.
Yeah.
I mean, the human institutions go wrong, including the Roman Church. People say, "It's the first church." It's just stupid. We all are connected by history, but the Roman Church is not the first church. The church in Jerusalem was. God likes Jerusalem better than Rome. And you got Russian Orthodox who make the same historical claim. They're just as ancient as you are. Are they wrong? And then you have Protestants. But really, God has no grandchildren. The only church that exists is the one that's alive in your generation, as far as you're concerned. And that's believers in Christ gathered together in his name right now. And you don't have to have a Catholic label to have that, or any label.
Well, I think that's a great place to cut it for today. I mean, I love being part of this body of Christ, and
Me too.
I thank all you guys for listening. Hopefully today was great. Send in your questions. I've been told multiple times, this is a failure of ours. How do you get questions in? Email them to the church. If you go to the website at the bottom, there's a contact us link. There's a contact us link up top on the website. You can fill out that contact form, or there's also an email address right there. I believe it's info@harvestpa.org. If you find any email address, internet form, phone number, if you have anybody's cell phone number, if you text, email, phone call, carrier pigeon a question
by
in
one
here,
of the campuses and hand it a handwritten.
that question will get to us somehow.
But I want you to know something though. Sign your name. Sign your name. There's a couple reasons why. One, when you sign your name, it says, "I don't have a secret agenda." There's someone who keeps filling out a Connect card and giving me a question, not giving me any context. Who are you? Why do you want to know? Or even how you want me to answer. I don't even know if that person knows we have a podcast. 3 times. I've told the secretaries, I don't want to see those. If I get that question again without a name, just throw it away. Because what am I going to do? Answer thin air to this question? I don't understand your agenda. Why do you keep asking me this question? It's not a friendly way of doing business to ask anonymous questions. So if you have anonymous questions, save those for someone else. Put your name on it, doggone it. We're brothers and sisters in Christ. And also, if it's something we can't answer here, I'll call you on the phone. I'm not afraid to answer any question one-on-one, but not all or am I going to do here.
We've said this before, but if this is your first episode, sharing your name does not mean we're going to share your name
You can
from
say,
the mic.
Yeah, we don't have to say who said this.
Yeah,
we'll make up a funny name.
Right. And we have a couple good questions right now. We wanted to get to them today, but I think we're a little long in the tooth, so we'll save them. But we got some great content for you guys coming up. We thank you for watching and joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
See ya!